Even experienced preppers are making food storage mistakes that scientific evidence proves will fail over time. Today we're using peer-reviewed studies to bust the most common and costly food storage myths. Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we are going to talk about some food storage myths that are going to be busted by science, because we have done the research and you may be storing things wrong. And so we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about the do's and the don'ts of 5 of the most popular methods for long-term food storage. But before we get into that, we want to thank Michelle from Big Valley Living for inviting us to participate in the 30 Days of Preparedness for Preparedness Month, which is the month of September. Yep. So we would highly encourage each one of you to go to the playlist and take some time every day and just watch one of those videos, because even just taking that little bit of time might really help you be able to increase your knowledge and your preparation for the insanity that's coming. Back to our video, the do's and don'ts for 10 to 25 plus year storage. That's long-term food storage. So John, talk to us about improper food storage.
We end up with spoilage or pest infestations, which are just a terrible mess, or potentially food poisoning, which absolutely none of us want to have, especially in a crisis type situation. So there are some very good reasons to make sure that we're doing it right, so that we have it right when we need it.
And it's simpler than you may think. We've got basic guidelines that if you do it right, you don't have to worry about that. But as always, you are responsible for your own education and for your own research. So anything that we say, you make sure that you go and you check it out and make sure that it is the right thing, as with anybody else that you listen to. So let's talk first about why the original containers fail for long-term food storage.
And that includes all these kinds of things, which these are really designed for short-term use. Even this, which you think, well, this is a little more ready, but no, absolutely not. This has got a permeable package on it. It's got the ability to absorb moisture and air, and of course, oxygen does oxidize our food. So yeah, we just need to not use these for our long-term storage. We've got to up our game.
So these are perfect for short-term food storage. And we highly recommend that everyone has at least a 3-month supply of short-term food storage. So today, don't mistake us. We're talking about long-term food storage, 10 to 25 years. This is not a good candidate.
Not gonna do it.
Not. Basically, you have 3 enemies to long-term food storage. The first is oxygen, which causes rancidity and nutrient loss.
Number 2 is moisture, which can create mold and bacteria growth.
And number 3 are pests, the insects that may grow in that food storage, or the rodents who may attack it, eat it, and contaminate it. In fact, we have a video that we did on some food storage that we were gifted, and the rodents had eaten through the Mylar bag and just ruined everything. And so if you click the card in the corner, it will take you to that video, and you will learn a lot more about the dangers of rodents in your food storage.
Scientific fact, multiple peer-reviewed studies show that insect eggs, larvae, pupae, and adults, they can't survive in an oxygen-free environment. So when you get that level down below 2%, you're gonna kill all of that. But we're gonna get it even lower than that, down to like 0.1% or even lower.
Let's move into 5 different methods for long-term food storage. Our first method is the most popular method for storing dry goods long-term, and that is Mylar bags. Now we're going to talk about the do's and the don'ts for everything, because it's really important you understand that so that you can be safe. So Jonathan?
Let's start with the do's. First of all, you want a good mil thickness. We want 5 to 7 mil thickness on those bags so they're robust. Make sure that you use a correctly sized oxygen absorber. Make sure it is heat sealed properly, and then make sure it's stored in a secondary container to keep the mice and other critters away.
Absolutely. Now, I am in charge of the don'ts, but before we go to the don'ts, I want to show you just a couple things about the way that we do things. So in this bag, we have just a bag of flour. And this is the second time we've used this Mylar bag. What we do is we've got the 25-pound bag of flour. We slit a little hole in it. We slide the oxygen absorber inside the bag, tape it shut, and then we just slide it back in this Mylar bag.
And seal it up.
Heat seal it up.
Yeah.
And that enables us to use the bags more than once.
Let me say, this bag will end up in a tote.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't a tote, it came out of a tote, it's going back in a tote, being rotated. So make sure you have that secondary container.
Because on our don'ts is don't just store it out in the open. This is one of the ways that we do it. We can do it in this tote. Now, this isn't a fabulous protection for mice, but it will help somewhat. It also helps so that the bags don't get punctured. It helps so that we can stack them, and it helps to organize it. This is another one. This is just a little sweater tote. I just have my rotisserie, freeze-dried rotisserie chicken in here, so it's really easy to access. Now in that bucket, you want to grab that one? Gamma seal buckets are a favorite of ours. That's another way that you can do it. It's much more rodent proof than either of these. But we've just got all the little Mylar bags inside of there. In my don'ts, don't use thin, cheap Mylar bags because sometimes that Mylar flakes off. You want to use high quality. In all of the food storage that we've done, we really, really like Pat Fresh USA. Their oxygen absorbers are incredible, but they have a really good line of Mylar bags, all kinds of different shapes and sizes. So you don't have to get that one. We will leave a link to it, but make sure that whatever you're getting is really good quality. And you never want to reuse the oxygen absorbers. They are one-time use. And you've got to use the right size. If you use the wrong size, see how little these are? If I use this in this big bag with this flour, it's not going to do anything. Right. There's still going to be a ton of oxygen. I have to use the larger one, right, the 2000 or the 2500, in order for it to remove all the oxygen. So don't make the mistake of reusing them or of missizing them. And then another don't is don't put high fat foods in there. Even if it's low moisture, but it's really high in fat, it might be a 4 or 5 year shelf life, but it's not going to be a 10 or 25 year shelf life if it's high in fats. So keep that in mind and put the right things in the Mylar bag. And on to method 2, which is food grade plastic buckets. Now they come in all different sizes and shapes. You've got 6-gallon ones that are even bigger than this, and you've got different colors, and if it's heavy for you, you can use little ones. Tell us about the do's of food-grade plastic buckets.
Make sure you only use high-quality food-grade buckets. Second, if you're going just for short-term, you don't need a liner, but if you are going for long-term, which is what this video is all about, use a good Mylar liner and make sure you extend that life. And if you like things like the Gamma Seal easy access lids, I love these, you can choose those, but choose something that's going to work for you, and remember the weight. These get very heavy, so if a 6-gallon may be exciting, but if that's way too heavy for you to deal with, choose a 2-gallon.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the Mylar bag inside, because we're going for 10 to 25 year shelf life in this video, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm just storing something for short term, it's great. But the walls of the plastic are actually permeable, which means that oxygen can get in over time. And if that low oxygen environment is compromised, that means that your food is going to start to degrade. But by using a Mylar liner, it's like armor. You put the Mylar bag inside, you dump the food in it, you put the right size oxygen absorber in it, then you kind of squeeze out the air and you heat seal it closed, and then tuck it all in here and tap this down. And then suddenly you are completely protected from oxygen and from moisture for 25 years or more. So that's one of the reasons why the combination of the bucket and the Mylar is ideal for long-term food storage.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the don'ts. Don't use non-food grade. Don't be tempted to, you're welcome to use used food buckets, right? Now I will tell you that we used a used food grade one for storing some wheat, and it had held bubble gum before. Well, guess what? Our wheat smelled and
it
kind
had
of
a
tasted
nice strong smell of
like
mint.
bubble gum.
So A little weird.
Yeah, so make sure that if they're repurposed, use a Mylar liner. Just make sure that it's nothing that's really strong. And then don't store the buckets directly on the concrete, because it can leach up, right, through the concrete. And so just don't store them directly on the concrete. Don't store too many on top of each other, because the weight can break the lid. And if that seal is compromised, then you can have oxygen get in. Overall, buckets, I think, are a fabulous way to go. I would be careful about the Gamma Seal lid if you don't have them in Mylar bags, because I don't know if somebody has opened this or not, right? There's no way really for me to tell. And once it's open, then it has allowed the oxygen in there. So unless you put another oxygen absorber in there, you could have issues. So I would be kind of careful about that. But overall, like, this is a really good way to do it. Okay, one safety tip for all of this: make sure that the food that you're storing in here is dry. Should be 10% moisture or less to safely store for the 10 to 25 years. Okay, if you remember, back in 2024, I stored some lima beans here. Well, not really. Now remember how we talked about the packages that come from the store are not ideal for long-term storage. Well, this has bags of chocolate chips and containers of Hershey cocoa in it inside this bucket. Now, just because I did that doesn't mean that I have a 25-year shelf life, no. But it definitely means that I have extended the shelf life of that original packaging. And because the chocolate, the way that it was stored originally, like the big bags of chocolate chip, the only thing at risk of this is me. But it's actually, because it's labeled lima beans, it's not at risk for the kids, right? Or the grandkids.
It was kind of cool because she faked herself out, and she's like, I don't remember packaging lima beans in 2024.
Why would I have packaged lima beans?
Because she doesn't like lima beans. So it was actually kind of funny that she faked herself out on this, but it does fake out the kids for sure, and the grandkids. Number 3 is number 10 cans, and I am a huge fan of number 10 cans. So let's jump into the do's here. These are great if you need smaller quantities of things, or if these are just the right weight for you to carry around. These are just a really nice size. They do provide just an excellent barrier against oxygen and moisture, and so they are kind of a little time capsule. But once you open these, you probably want to use them within about a year or so.
And it depends on which product it is.
Yeah.
For instance, the rice, I could probably get away with a couple years, right? Once you open this can of cheese, freeze-dried foods really like to absorb moisture from the air. So for me personally, any meats or cheeses that I open, after I open it, I would keep it in the fridge. I'd keep a plastic lid on it, and that would be good. For the don'ts, don't expect that you're going to be able to reseal this can. Once it's opened, it's opened. You can put the plastic lid on it, but it will not give you the same protection. It will not create that oxygen-free environment. Don't store in a place where the cans can rust. Now, having said that, we've opened rusty cans and had the stuff in the middle, the food in the middle, be just fine. But you really are better off. Make sure that wherever you're storing them is a place that doesn't have a lot of moisture. And then if a can happens to get dented, use it right away and don't store that can, because that seal may have been compromised. Now I'm going to give you a little secret about where to buy some of this stuff. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints operates something called home storage centers, because they encourage all of their members to store food so that they are prepared when hard times come, so that they can be self-reliant. If you go onto their website, they don't sell very many different things, but they have basics, and a lot of those are cheaper than you can get anywhere else. Like the black beans, for me, I buy my black beans already in these cans because they're cheaper. Now, some of the pinto beans I can buy someplace else and have it cheaper than in the can, not for long-term storage, but this is just a really good idea. So anything that they have there, I buy that first. If you can't, their website's a little bit hard to navigate sometimes. So if you have any problems, just look up that 800 number and call them and have them walk you through it. Another place that I really like is the Nutri-Store. The products that they sell, they're just good quality. I don't have to worry about opening the can later and it not being good. So I will leave a link to the Nutri-Store also. But the number 10 cans, if you're wanting to just put food storage away and not think about it and not rotate it, Buy number 10 cans, store them under your bed, try and get them into a cool, dry, dark location. And for the most part, depending on what's in the can, you can have up to a 25-year shelf life, even 30 years. In fact, some of the wheat that we're using right now is well over 30 years old.
Yeah, and it's still super high quality. It's been stored well, but yeah, after more than 30 years, it's still in great shape.
And we're working through that one. So this, fantastic option. Method number 4 is glass jars. They can be mason jars or repurposed jars. It's a great way to inexpensively be able to store your dried goods. In fact, we created an entire video on this. If you want to click the card in the corner, I will put a link there so that you can get to it in detail.
So let's talk about the do's. First of all, make sure you use an oxygen absorber, and also make sure that the lids are in good condition so that they will seal tight. These are awesome for smaller quantities and a really good way to go.
Yeah, because you can reuse them over and over again, right? There's not as much waste. But now let's talk about the don'ts. Don't use old or damaged jars. You want to make sure that you've got a good seal on here and that you don't have anything that would contaminate your food in there. So make sure that they're squeaky clean before you put the food in them. Now, this is going to be a hard one for a lot of people to take, but this is the science, okay? This is the science. Do not rely solely on vacuum sealing to store your dried goods. And there's some really good reasons why, because the science shows that vacuum sealing doesn't remove all of the oxygen. What does it get it down to, John?
Maybe down to 1 to 2%, but that's still more than we want in there.
Absolutely. And if you're using an oxygen absorber, then you get it down to 0.01%. Pretty much no oxygen in there. And remember, we don't want oxygen in here for a couple reasons. Because it oxidizes the food, and because it also, there's a chance of insect infestation, right? And we don't want either of those. Another thing is, don't store these in the light. They need to be stored in the dark. And glass is subject to breakage. That is one of the things that always concerns me about it. We have a really fun video about storing glass jars in a banana box, but there's definitely a few drawbacks using glass jars.
Now, vacuum sealing is not a bad thing, but we always include an oxygen absorber as well, just to do the job right.
And method number 5 is peat plastic bottles. These are bottles that have been repurposed, they've been scrubbed really well and allowed to air dry. In fact, you're gonna wanna click the card in the corner and go to a video that I created on this with some real detailed instructions on how to do this. But this is a fantastic thing because in here, we've got a repurposed, I think it was a Powerade bottle, and it's been filled up with black beans. It has an oxygen absorber in it. And then we actually put duct tape around here to make sure that this seal was 100%. But you can use any bottle that says peat on the bottom. Juice bottles and soda bottles actually work really, really well.
So these are an inexpensive alternative. These aren't going to be a 25-year option for you, though. These are more like a 10-year option. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get quite as much life, but for something that you're going to reuse that's going to be basically free, great way to go.
And I have to say, though, because I'm using popcorn that I stored in one of these from, 2006. So what's the math on that? That's almost 20 years and it's still okay. So I wouldn't target it that long. I would target it more for shorter long term, so 10 years or so.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the do's. You want a number 1 recycling symbol. You want a good food grade bottle. And make sure that you use an oxygen absorber in that. And these are just really awesome for things like beans and rice.
So let's talk a little bit about the don'ts. We don't want to put anything in it that might clog the bottle. Now, if I were to put sugar in here, because the plastic is permeable, you're gonna get a little tiny bit of moisture going back and forth and the sugar will turn hard. Salt is gonna turn hard in here. So I would totally avoid doing that in this bottle. I would not store them in direct sun. And okay, one of the problems with these, they're kind of hard to store. Like they're kind of hard to put in the right box that can stack. So it's a little bit strange, but one of the things I really love about this, and we did this intentionally so that if we have a hungry neighbor, we can say, here neighbor, here's some beans, or here's some cornmeal. The cornmeal did really well in here. I mean, think about that, but Never, ever, ever with this use non-food grade containers or containers that have held anything that you wouldn't eat. I would avoid personally anything like peanut butter or oils, any container that has had any type of fat in it, because it only takes a teeny bit of residual fat to make the entire thing go rancid. That's what I would avoid. But there is definitely some science behind the oxygen absorber with this. And why don't you tell them why it's super important to put an oxygen absorber in?
We're talking about the science here. So in the Journal of Economic Entomology, which is the study of insects, oxygen levels below 4%. In 3 days, it had killed all the eggs. And within 10 days, it had killed 75% of all the larvae and pupae. So we're doing really well in that area. Now remember, with this oxygen absorber, we're going down to 0.01%, not 4%. So we're even more effective.
And the reason why these peat bottles aren't going to store quite as long as other things is because this plastic is permeable. But they have done studies that show that the peat plastic can maintain that zero oxygen environment for at least 1 year. They haven't done the longer studies. So I mean, this is more of a 10-year thing. Don't try pushing it to 25. But I think this is really good. You're not going to have bugs in your food storage, and it's not going to have an issue because of oxidation.
There you have it, friends. 5 solid methods for putting away that long-term storage. So let's talk a little bit about the safety do's and don'ts. Make sure that you do use 10% or less moisture in the foods that you're putting away. Make sure it's labeled and dated, so that you know what it is and when it was put away. Remember those storage conditions: cool, dark, and dry. That's always the criteria that we use. Make sure that you rotate it so they're using the oldest stuff first, and make sure that you keep that storage area clean and pest-free.
And for the don'ts, don't store foods that are higher than 10% moisture in your long-term food storage. Don't mix different foods in the same container. And the reason why is that all the food is subject to whatever the shortest shelf life was. So if you put beans and bouillon in that same container, that bouillon limits the shelf life of everything else in there. So it's best for long-term storage, just store them separately. Never store near chemicals or anything with a strong odor, because remember, these are permeable and that can cause trouble. And then never ignore signs of moisture or pests in your storage area. You've got to keep it cleaned and be on top of that so that you can protect your best investment.
Please remember, storing food now provides you with peace of mind and security down the road.
And start with one of these methods, practice it, learn more about it, and then expand. Don't say, okay, I'm going to do it this way and then do 500 pounds of something. Do it a little bit at a time so you can learn, and that way your food will be good 25 years from now.
Now for the question of the day. What food storage mistake have you made, and what did you learn from that? Drop those in the comments. Let's talk about this. Let's learn from each other so we don't all have to make the same mistakes.
And make sure that you visit 30 Days of Preparedness, that playlist, and follow it so that we can all, by the end of September, be just a little bit better prepared than we were today. Hey, you guys, thanks so much for being part of the solution.